Country love, yeah, when she 49. What I'm singing about today, this America, sweet America, may God glorify. Okay, welcome to the Reality Check with Charles Butler. Little Ray Charles to open up the show today. Hey, look, we have a friend of mine, Tony Heller, who is a climatologist. He advised President Trump in 2016 when he ran for office on climate change and what the real deal was on climate change. He's also an author and blogger and commentator, television, radio about climate change. We're going to give you a real education about climate change. And I'd like to bring Tony on right now. Hey, Tony, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Charles. How about yourself?
I'm outstanding.
Good.
You know, as I was getting ready, prepping for the show this afternoon, there was a segment that I saw, and it said something about in the Northwest that these mussels had fried, literally millions of mussels had fried now or boiled to death. Now, I've boiled mussels before, and I know that you have to actually get them boiling in order for them to, open up and all that stuff. What's the deal on that? Because I saw this on TV, and I saw these people walking around on just thousands and thousands of mussel shells.
Yeah, I think maybe their use of the term boiling was probably exaggerated. And obviously, temperatures weren't hot enough to actually boil anything. But it seems plausible that the very hot weather they had in the Pacific Northwest could have killed a lot of wildlife.
Okay, could have killed a lot of wildlife. Okay, gotcha.
I mean, there's lots of historical records of heating events killing lots of animals, sea creatures and land creatures. And in 1859 in Santa Barbara, California, there were some downslope winds, which heated the temperature up to 133 degrees Fahrenheit on June 17th, 1859, for a few hours. And it was so hot that the fruit literally baked on the trees and fell off. Full-grown cattle died from just a few hours of heat. Birds fell out of the trees. And similar events in Australia during January of 1896.
Okay.
In Spain in the 19th century, these things happened. So it's not unusual for very hot weather to kill animals and plants.
Okay. So are they making a big deal out of nothing, or was this a traumatic event last summer? Because they said,
it was certainly the heat in the Pacific Northwest at the end of June was extreme, and supposedly Canada set their all-time temperature record of 121 degrees. So there was some very hot weather, which is going to be difficult on plants and animals. Yeah.
Well, look, Tony, when we were talking earlier, and we were talking about the fact that nobody mentions that Bill Gates has been talking about openly the last 20 years about culling the human population because it was killing the planet. Nobody talks about this stuff. And then we get a pandemic, and this is interesting. And I know you've made this connection. Bill Gates is investing in the pandemic medication BioNTech, which is, I think, AstraZeneca. It's either AstraZeneca or what's the other one? Moderna. I can't remember which right now. But he invested $500 million in that company like 3-4 years ago. And then Fauci said, well, Trump's definitely going to have a pandemic during his during his tenure. I mean, I didn't say this. Fauci said it.
Yeah. Well, Bill Gates made huge amounts of money during the pandemic. He made more than $10 billion doing it. So he obviously did extremely well from it. And, pharmaceuticals are making huge amounts of money off this. And, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett are both heavily invested in pharmaceuticals. So follow the money, right?
Well, but people aren't following the money. I mean, how can Bill Gates know to invest in a company that will be a major vaccine manufacturer for this particular pandemic?
Yeah, and you consider the fact that pharmaceutical companies have tried for decades to make a vaccine for coronaviruses. They've never been successful. And then all of a sudden, in just a few weeks, they were able to create a vaccine for this particular coronavirus. And they got it approved in like 4 months, right? The previous record for a vaccine approval was 4 years, and the average is 10 years. And all of a sudden, they sped everything up by a factor of 10. For this particular coronavirus. And they've never had a successful coronavirus vaccine before. So the whole thing looks pretty dodgy.
So what do you think of this vaccine? Have you gotten the vaccine yet, if I may ask?
I wouldn't get within 20 feet of that thing. So I know lots of people who got the vaccine and got sick. My next door neighbor got the vaccine, got a blood clot in his brain a few weeks later, and died. He died of a stroke. No, I'm not getting the vaccine. I asked his widow a few weeks later. I said, "Did Bob get the vaccine?" And she said, "Yeah. Why?" So she wasn't even aware of the fact that, blood clotting was a potential side effect.
Well, a lot of Americans aren't. And it's really sad because, Nancy Pelosi and Biden and Schumer and others you need to get the vaccine or we'll make you get the vaccine. Somebody was on TV. Someone was on television the other day, some Democrat muckety muck, and he was saying that we need to make it as difficult on people who won't get vaccinated as possible. We need to make their lives miserable, and they will get the vaccine. We need to deny them access to restaurants, deny them access to airplanes, deny them access to ball games if they're not vaccinated. How do you tell if a person's vaccinated or not?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. If you're, I guess it's easier for them to do that with like international travel. Like you can't travel to the EU anymore without some documents of vaccines. But walking into the supermarket, are they going to check your records? I mean, are they going to sew a patch on your sleeve? Like they did in World War II with the Jews, no vax or something. How do you enforce something like that?
Well, let's listen to Fauci. Fauci real quick. Yeah. Fauci he says, wait a minute. Donald Trump is definitely going to have a pandemic on his hands. We're going to make sure that he has a pandemic. And people aren't really like paying any attention to this. And I think it's so significant that, this man not predicted. He said, no, he is definitely going to have a pandemic. He didn't warn or he didn't forecast. He said he will definitely have a pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. If you listen to what these people are saying, they're telegraphing what they're planning on doing. But most people just choose not to listen. People like to believe that the government's taking care of them, and they like to believe that the press is telling them the truth, even though both are obviously incorrect. But it's very uncomfortable for people to think that they're being lied to or that the government is not on their side.
Well, what I find
Yeah.
interesting, what I find interesting is it's easy for them to accept. It's easy for them to accept that Donald Trump is lying to them, but they cannot. They cannot even begin to fathom that Joe Biden put his hand down that girl's panties. I know he put his hands down that girl's panties. And I'll tell you why I know he put his hands down that girl's panties. Because I would put my hand down her panties if we were alone.
Yeah, that's right. I'm Jewish, Charles, and I'm an historian. I've read through a lot of the history of Germany during the 1930s. The Nazis were very open about their plans for the Jews, going back to the early 1930s. But all these people, all these Jews in Germany just chose not to listen. It was too painful. They didn't want to believe it was true. And then they ended up paying a very high price for it later. And we've got the same situation now. We're being told that the government, that these globalists have very bad plans for us, and people just choose to ignore it and pretend it's not happening, even though it's happening right in front of their faces.
Yeah, well, they don't want you. I think you're absolutely right. But the difference is we have a group of Americans over here. We're paying attention. We're not going to let them rule the roost. We're not going to let them be in control. We're not going to allow them to take over from us. That's all. That's all.
Yeah. Well, having the internet and the communications age and history of what's happened in the past is certainly helpful. But there's still a large percentage of people who just choose to keep their eyes closed because it's uncomfortable to actually look at what's going on around them.
So listen, this guy says that, how come nobody plays this tape on TV? Not even Fox News. Listen.
There will be a surprise outbreak. Given, as you heard from the introduction, that I have been around for a while and have had the opportunity and the privilege and the pleasure of serving in 5 administrations, I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge, the coming administration, in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. And I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation, you will understand why the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with. So for those who think that infectious diseases is gone, there's so many people who've made foolhardy statements, not knowing at the time that they made them. I usually show a...
Wow. Wow. I mean, he just breaks it down. Well, we know it's coming. It didn't come on Obama's watch, though. We made sure that it didn't come on Obama's watch. But I just sent the virus that we're going to use to shut down the world to Wuhan so that they can leak it to the rest of the world.
Yeah, well,
wait a minute. And I sent them a $3 million grant to make sure they did it.
Yeah, and this wasn't the first virus out of Wuhan. In 1996, there was the Wuhan flu pandemic, which killed a huge number of people around the world. And what are the odds of the same city in China just creating 2 of the largest pandemics over a 25-year period? And the fact that they also have the Chinese virology lab there. So, the idea that this is a coincidence just doesn't hold any water.
Well, when Trump said this, the first thing they said was he's racist. Oh, don't call it the communist Chinese flu. Well, you call the African flu the African flu. You called SARS, you called, we had all these different flus that we named after their origin, but you couldn't call China or the Chinese flu. But this is the other thing that pisses me off. They keep talking about this rise of hate crimes against Chinese. Well, this is an actual statistic. In 2019, one hate crime against a Chinese person. In 2020, 24 alleged hate crimes against Chinese people. Whoop T effing D. Okay, so they go around it. It's an 800% increase in crime against Asians.
Yeah.
So how many Asians were actually attacked?
I don't know.
Well, I'm just telling you. I told you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, in 1996, the New York Times called it the Wuhan flu. But then when Trump was president, calling it when Trump called it that, all of a sudden the New York Times said it was racist, right?
Well, yeah, they're a bunch of hypocrites, like most liberals.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go back and you read, I was doing some research, and I was looking at the language used in the New York Times during the race riots of the Civil War, because what people were doing, they were paying Irish guys to take their draft slot.
Yeah.
And the Irish were rebelling, right? They were the poor people of the area of the North. And so they had these riots, man. And the language that they used in referring to black people was horrific. And that continued I don't know why people think that, when I talk to people, for some reason, they don't think that slavery existed in the northern colonies. And I go, well, how come they stopped a construction project on Wall Street because there was a grave site of black slaves?
Yeah.
And this guy said to me, "That's not true, Charles. That's not true. That didn't happen. Fake news."
Yeah.
That's what the guy told me. Fake news. So I go and I pull it out of New York Times, right? I said, "Still fake news? You want me to pull it out of Washington Post? You want me to pull it out off CNN?" I said, the grave site exists. They relocated the cemetery and the bodies. I'm just telling you what happened, dude. All 13 colonies had slaves.
Yeah.
And as Joe Biden was quick to admit, my state was a slave state. My state was a slave state.
Well, the thing, I've studied slavery quite a bit, and slavery was ubiquitous around most of the world prior to the Industrial Revolution and fossil fuels, because they needed to generate a lot of food for people, and they needed a lot of human labor to do it, and slavery was how essentially everybody was doing it around the world. But then when we had the Industrial Revolution and fossil fuels became widely available, then they didn't need slave labor anymore. They were able to do the same thing using machinery. So it was really fossil fuels and the Industrial Revolution. Technology is what enabled the end of slavery in the West.
Well, actually, you're right, and I contend this, Tony, and I don't know if you discovered this in your research, but what I discovered. And you know what? We'll take a short break, and I'll tell you what I discovered when we come back. Okay. Let's take a short break.
Cannabis Conversation, and I'm here to talk to you about how you can take responsibility for your own health. CV Science products that can help you empower yourself against the COVID-19 virus are CV Acute and CV Defense. The Acute product is taken at an early onset of feelings of discomfort and works over 3 days to assist your immune system to fight off the virus. The second product is CV Defense, which is taken daily, and it helps to optimize the power of your immune system to fight off this virus. Recently on my program, I had an interview with Dr. Michael Lewis, who's been in public health for decades. I asked him about personal responsibility, and he said,
"You are responsible for your own health. Don't count on the government to provide you with a magic pill or a magic shot for your health. That is your personal responsibility."
If you want to empower yourself and take control of your healthcare, go to empoweryourself.info. That's empoweryourself.info and take care of your healthcare.
Okay, we're back, and I want to share with you, Tony, what I think is I should say outline some events that I see happening in Britain, in the late 1760s, there was a big push of abolitionists in London and in the UK and Britain, in Great Britain, and they were advocating for the abolishment of slavery. Period. So, but they had already transitioned, as you point out, to a industrial economy. So they were building plants and bringing people in from the farms to work in cities and work in the various factories to make clothing and textiles, and they had textile mills. Now America didn't get its first factory until 1828, when a guy named Slater, the trader, as the Brits call him, built a textile factory in Massachusetts. He had stolen the plans from the people he used to work for. Now, we call Slater the father of the American Industrial Revolution. The Brits called him Slater the trader. So I contend that with this threat to abolish slavery and the mounting the attempts to have the colonists pay off or help to pay off the debt of what they call it the 7-Year War. We call it the Indian War, something Indian War. I got it right here, but we call it and because George Washington cut his stripes in that war. He learned a lot, but the French and Indian War, that's what we called it. They call it the 7-Year War, and in their history books. So it's really interesting. So and so they had all these little taxes, the stamp tax, the glass tax, all these, and none of these taxes lasted more than 2 years. So because they were so unpopular, they never lasted more than 2 years, and they never generated any money. Then they had the Quartering Act, and where the British wanted to keep a force on this side of the ocean instead of the expense of moving an army back and forth across the Atlantic, right? So, all of those factors built in led up to the colonists' push for independence, because, the colonists had it pretty good. They were represented in Parliament. They were far enough away not to be under the thumb of the king, and but to still be British and subjects. So they were protected by who? The British, the most powerful nation in the world at the time, the Brits. So as we fast forward, with the Declaration of Independence and up to the surrender in 1783 and the founding of the country and setting of the president in 1877, slavery was always an issue. Slavery was always an issue because that's what the economy depended on. But American slavery, as you well know, Tony, was different than other slavery. American slavery was linked to color, the color of a person's skin. And there's some really interesting dynamics about how white indentured slaves became free white people. And that was to increase the white population when they had all these black slaves, because the indentured whites and the slaves got together against the free whites. So that was an interesting time, I guess. But it's interesting. The history of the country is truly interesting without people making up things.
Oh, yeah. I love history. Yeah. Probably my main interest in climate came from just a love of studying history and, reading about past historical weather, climate change. And I've learned how incredibly dishonest the whole narrative is now about extreme weather and climate change. We've always had terrible extreme weather, terrible droughts, terrible hurricanes. 3 of the 10 deadliest Atlantic hurricanes occurred during the Revolutionary War. And 8 of the 25 deadliest occurred within a 20-year period around the Revolutionary War. So something was going on around that time. The second half of the 18th century, which was producing horrific hurricanes. In the 1780 hurricane was the deadliest on record in the Atlantic. It destroyed every single structure on Barbados. The winds were over 200 miles per hour, and heavy cannons were lifted hundreds of feet into the air by the wind.
Dang.
Study of history is very interesting.
It is. I always say history is far more interesting than fiction.
Yeah. There was a terrible hurricane in St. Croix in 1772, which Alexander Hamilton, he was a boy at the time, but he wrote an article about that in the local newspaper, and his prose was so good he got noticed for that, and that's how he ended up coming to the United States. Was his skill at writing about that 1772 hurricane is what brought him to the United States. Lots of interesting history there.
Who were his parents? Because there's always some question about whether or not he was of mixed descent.
Yeah, I don't know, but he did grow up he was born and raised in the Caribbean, so that wouldn't be surprising.
There's a great deal of admixture going on down there.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting stuff. And all the propaganda, we're hearing about climate and this extreme weather and this heat wave up in the Pacific Northwest, Charles, being unprecedented. It's simply not true.
Mm-hmm.
No U.S. states broke all-time temperature record this year. But if you go back 85 years ago to 1936, almost half of the states set their all-time temperature record in 1936. In fact, this date in 1936 was probably the hottest day on record in the United States.
And isn't it odd that we have you on the hottest day in the history of the United States? And we have Tony Heller with us, a climatologist.
Yeah, it was incredible. The temperature, I think Wisconsin on July 14th, 1936 was 114 degrees. Can you imagine that now in Wisconsin? The Midwest, upper Midwest never gets over 100 anymore. It was 114 back then. 30 states were over 100 degrees on the state in 1936, and every state but 2 was over 90 degrees.
Well, let me ask you this: Is NOAA still and NASA still changing the temperatures to?
Of course. Yeah, of course. If you look at the actual thermometer data for the United States, the 1930s were in the United States. Afternoon temperatures in the United States were much hotter prior to 60 years ago. Particularly, if you look from about 1910 to the mid 1950s, the heat was unbelievable.
Uh-huh.
During the 1930s, the heat was so bad and the drought was so bad that millions of people couldn't live in the Midwest anymore. Their farms dried up, the heat was intolerable. So millions of people fled the Midwest and moved out to California. And this is what, Steinbeck wrote about this very eloquently in The Grapes of Wrath. We had a true climate refugee problem where millions of people moved to California at that time. And now, the weather is much more mild now, and we have air conditioning. And just today, that someone sent me a story about Soros is pushing this climate refugee thing. We don't have climate refugees now. But 85 years ago, we did. We had a terrible climate refugee program.
Soros is probably one of the most dangerous people on earth. And I don't understand why he's not censored. I don't understand why he's not canceled like the rest of the cancel culture.
Well, he's like Bill Gates. He owns he's got the money to buy the press. He's got the money to buy politicians, academics. So who's going to cancel him? He owns them.
What tickles me is that he took full control of the foundation from his ex-wife, or soon to be ex-wife.
Yeah. Yeah. It's money. Money corrupts, and that's the problem we've got. Many of our very important institutions have been bought off, and that's why people don't get the real story.
I wanted to reach out to Ginger, but I'm sure she's doing a lot of soul searching.
Yeah, it's crazy. Whole thing's crazy. They're making it very easy for me. All of this fake news about climate. It's a no-brainer for me at this point to show that they're lying about essentially every single thing they say about climate, because their story is so outrageous and nothing to do with reality. And I have a lot of knowledge of history of climate, and but I just see a news story and I immediately know how to respond to it at this point. So for what I'm doing, it's great for me. But as far as the world's concerned and as far as the country's concerned, all of these lies are a disaster.
And they don't know their lies. And they just repeat what they hear. And that's what's so sad. I hear people repeating Fauci. I hear people repeating this news that that we have this severe climate problem, and if we don't, Joe Biden said yesterday, if we don't deal with it, the world is going to a hell in a handbasket. I'm just gonna play that clip real quick.
Challenge is as urgent as climate change. Last week, I met with 8 governors for a better part of an hour. Challenges.
Nothing's more challenging.
As urgent as climate change. No challenge is as urgent as climate change.
Nothing is no challenge more urgent than climate change. What about China? What about China's Navy and our Navy telling the president, we're not prepared to go to war. We don't have enough ships to go to war. We don't have enough people to go to war. But the most pressing, what I don't get, Tony, here we are. Every damn thing that we do or that we need has increased by at least 5%. You look at gas. When Trump left office, 189. And now it's the average is 315. I mean, that's ridiculous. Housing's up 10%. Everything is up double-digit inflation, and people are running around talking about, well, at least we don't have somebody in there who's an idiot. Yeah, we do.
Like I said, this week in 1936 was probably the hottest week on record in the United States. Thousands of people died in the Midwest from the heat this week in 1936. At one point, people in Midwest were dying every few minutes from the heat. It was so bad. And if you look at deaths from all types of natural disasters, including weather, over the past century, they've plummeted. The deaths from natural disasters are at an all-time record low right now. And a lot of the reason for that is because we now have air conditioning and fossil fuels. We have a good, readily available supply of energy, and we have air conditioning, and that's what's keeping people from dying from the heat like they used to. And what are these guys demonizing? Biden and his crew, they're demonizing fossil fuels. They're demonizing air conditioning itself.
But they're in air conditioning. I mean, Joe Biden rides around in a car that gets 2 miles to a gallon.
Yeah. And you think these climate scientists who are demonizing fossil fuels and demonizing air conditioning, they're sitting there working in their fossil fuel powered air conditioned office, right? I'm talking about how we need to get rid of air conditioning. Well, they wouldn't turn off the air conditioning in their office. And they want to get rid of the fossil fuels, and they want everyone to switch over to wind power, right? And we saw what happened in Texas in February. Texas went big on wind. On February 12th of this year, USA Today was bragging how Texas was as much as 70% wind powered. And then 2 days later, they had that terrible cold snap Wind turbines froze up, and people started dying in Texas really quickly because they couldn't get enough energy. And this is the future, right? When they shut down the fossil fuels and make it unavailable to us, we're going to see a lot of people dying because wind power is not reliable, solar is not reliable. You know, what's keeping people alive is the fossil fuels.
And today I heard that OPEC just cut a deal with the EAU as to how much oil they're going to produce. I mean, that was in the paper today, so they cut that deal yesterday.
Yeah, so, you know, if you look at who's actually funding all these green groups who are going up against American oil interests, they're being funded by Russia. They're being funded by countries which are hostile to our energy.
But listen to this one. Joe Biden, when he went over and met with Putin, they asked Joe Biden, well, Joe, why did you sign off on the Russian pipeline into Germany? He said, well, how else are they going to have any revenue? That fucking moron. Somebody needs to punch him in the fucking face. I'm telling you. Well, now YouTube will probably censor me for that. They'll, give me a little strike. Say, oh my God, Charles said, strike somebody in the face. Yeah. I'd like to strike the person who's doing the striking strike. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, my friend.
Yeah.
What you gonna leave us with today?
What's my what?
What are you gonna leave us with today?
Oh, just stay tuned to this whole climate thing. I mean, what they're doing is they're generating all this propaganda to demonize fossil fuels, demonize cheap energy, demonize air conditioning, and we're going to pay a huge price for this. Like you said, we're already seeing a huge increase in oil prices since the election. Well, the price of crude oil has more than doubled since election day. And we're going to see a big price in human life. You know, we saw what happened in Texas. When you can't get enough energy during times of bad weather, people die very quickly. And we're going to see a lot more of that in the future if these climate scamsters are allowed to continue. So I'm educating as many.
Got myself out of Beirut once.
Okay.
About this because that's going to be our future if we allow this scam to continue.
Well, some people are allowing it to continue, my friend. There's no question. Hey, look, thanks again. Thanks for being with me, Tony. Thanks for spending so much time with us. Appreciate you, dude.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Good talking with you.
You too, my friend. All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, folks, we're going to take a quick break here.
Hello, this is Dan Perkins from America's Cannabis Conversation, and I'm here to talk to you about how you can take responsibility for your own health. CV Science products that can help you empower yourself against the COVID-19 virus are CV Acute and CV Defense. The Acute product is taken at an early onset of feelings of discomfort and works over 3 days to assist your immune system to fight off the virus. The second product is CV Defense, which is taken daily, and it helps to optimize the power of your immune system to fight off this virus. Recently on my program, I had an interview with Dr. Michael Lewis, who's been in public health for decades. I asked him about personal responsibility, and he said,
you are responsible for your own health. Don't count on the government to provide you with a magic pill or a magic shot for your health. That is your personal responsibility.
If you want to empower yourself and take control of your health care, go to empoweryourself.info. That's empoweryourself.info and take care of your healthcare.
Okay, we're back. And one of the things I want to talk about today is voter ID. So Biden comes out day before yesterday, and this is what he has to say about voter ID.
The 21st century Jim Crow assault is real. It's unrelenting. And we're going to challenge it vigorously. It's no longer just about who gets to vote or making it easier for eligible voters to vote. It's about who gets to count the vote. Who gets to count whether or not your vote counted at all. We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War. The Confederates back then never breached the Capitol, as insurrectionists did on January the 6th. I'm not saying this to alarm you. I'm saying this because you should be alarmed.
Wait a minute. Okay. So the Confederates, who we were at war with, never breached the Capitol. And supposedly, these people who breached the Capitol were insurrectionists. Hey, well, stupid Joe, I don't remember these people having guns. I don't remember these people demanding that that they stay permanently in these offices, or throw these people permanently out of office, or even confront them anyway. I don't remember that. Maybe you have to refresh my memory. Joe Biden. They're gonna put y'all back in chains. Joe's just lying. He's lying about voter ID. He's lying about voter fraud. Jim Crow. He knows nothing about Jim Crow, even though his state was a Jim Crow state, Delaware. That's right. And since blacks just blindly go out and vote for the what? Democrat. I'm a Democrat. Man, I have to shake my head whenever I hear a black person say they're a Democrat. That's one uninformed person. Okay, what we saying here? Let's see. For Benny Bear says Vermont was the first place in the world to ban slavery before there was a United States. Tony and his pups are great. Yeah, that's true. Vermont did ban slavery, but it was still one of the original 13 colonies, and at one time, certainly, people had slaves in Vermont. And if people had been smart, they would have gone along with the freedom, because we had what was called we stopped the slave trade supposedly in 1808. Great Britain came out with an edict that the slave trade would stop. It didn't, of course. And how do we know that? We know that because there is a boat that's down in, I think it's in, I want to say Alabama, but I think it's in Louisiana. And I can't remember the name of the boat, but the town that these people founded, these Africans, it's called African Town. Now it was destroyed by the white power structure running a freeway right through it. Like they've done numerous prosperous communities, vibrant communities across the country. Amazing. So, you have all these mothers who don't have families to raise children. We kind of get what we get, which is this bastardization of family, bastardization of life and living. And it's not fair. It's not fair to the children. Certainly not fair to society. But hey, let me think for a second. Let's see. We had something else that we were going to do. Joe Biden inviting and the what do you call it? That voting rights is number one on our list.
In 2020, democracy was put to a test. First by the pandemic, then by a desperate attempt to deny the reality and the results of the election, with recount after recount after recount, court case after court case. The 2020 election was the most scrutinized election ever in American history. In every case, neither cause nor evidence was found.
That's because the judge didn't look at the case.
to undermine the national achievement of administering the historic.
They did not look at the case. They didn't look at the dirt in the case. They didn't look at any of the accusations in the case. They did not want the situation to come out. They removed a set of panties that this lady had when she was at Costco getting strip search. And they weren't her. She had a plastic bag. Man, these dudes are something else, I tell you. And then they'll conveniently lose that bag, so you'll never know what was in it, right? Let's go back to the tape. Joe Biden.
Ever in American history. In every case, neither cause nor evidence was found to undermine the national achievement of administering the historic election. The big lie is just that, a big lie. In America, if you lose, you accept the results. You follow the Constitution. You try again. You don't call facts fake and then try to bring down the American experiment just because you're unhappy. That's not statesmanship. That's selfishness.
Well, that's Joe Biden. I tell you, that's our commander in chief. We are in trouble. Believe me, we are in trouble. So, this whole Voting Rights Act thing is picking up a lot of steam, and Sharpton and Martin Luther King III, who's nobody, little fat ass guy with no vision, no hustle, trying to sell off their daddy's stuff, for lack of a better term, his tapings and his images and things like that. So let's go to Sharpton saying that he wants folks to come to Washington and do what? Pontificate? Do what? Sit and watch him? I mean, really? I mean, that's about it. So I'll put in here. Let's see. Sharpton. That's how you pronounce it. Sharpton. Okay.
King III and I have called for a national march on August 28th. Last year on August 28th, which is the anniversary of Dr. King's march, over 200,000 people came out in a pandemic around policing. This year, we're calling on them to come out around voting rights.
Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to come out on Voting Rights Act? There's nothing wrong with the Voting Rights Act. You know, I hear some of these pundits and some of these politicians talk about the vote. They have no idea what it is. They have no idea what's in it besides the talking points. Now, when we go to start talking about the what do you call it? Come on. Voters' rights or the Voting Rights Acts and those laws, something just came out of Maricopa County, and it said that the number of votes cast did not match the total. True story. I'll have the details when we come back. Okay.
Hello, this is Dan Perkins from America's Cannabis Conversation, and I'm here to talk to you about how you can take responsibility for your own health. CV Science products that can help you empower yourself against the COVID-19 virus are CV Acute and CV Defense. The Acute product is taken at an early onset of feelings of discomfort and works over 3 days to assist your immune system to fight off the virus. The second product is CV Defense, which is taken daily, and it helps to optimize the power of your immune system to fight off this virus. Recently, Recently on my program, I had an interview with Dr. Michael Lewis, who's been in public health for decades. I asked him about personal responsibility, and he said,
You are responsible for your own health. Don't count on the government to provide you with a magic pill or a magic shot for your health. That is your personal responsibility.
if you want to empower yourself and take control of your healthcare, go to empoweryourself.info. That's empoweryourself.info and take care of your healthcare.
Okay, we're back. And it looks like the Arizona Senate president says that the 2020 election audit ballot count doesn't match Maricopa County's tally. Wow. So yesterday, Karen Van said that the 2020 presidential election audit ballot count led by cyber ninjas different from the Maricopa County tally. And that the discrepancy prompted the election review team to acquire new machines to recount the ballots. Wow. They haven't released the number yet, but it said, however, we do know that those numbers do not match with Maricopa County at this point. Wow. Wow. See, once we really get an opportunity to present these cases, it's like right now, Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood are being chewed up in Detroit by a federal judge who I happen to have gone to college with, Linda Parker. Nice lady, beautiful lady, inside and out, smart as a whip. But she's grilling Powell and Wood and Giuliani, I guess, about as to what they had checked and verified before they put forth this lawsuit. And so their argument is, well, people filed an affidavit. I took them at their word. What you gonna do? If you at a stoplight, in a pizza line, just do what you gonna do. So you're gonna throw it on me softly. Mm-hmm. You can put a little bit more on that. Yep. Okay. Gotcha. But let's see here. You putting money in the jar today? Did I curse? I don't remember. You need an ID for everything important. Why not to vote? Because people want to cheat. So Maricopa County said, okay, this is in Arizona, where they, been saying, well, they haven't found anything yet. Well, they always find something when they're allowed to let the process play out. They haven't been allowed to let the process play out in the other places, unfortunately. So look, we're getting ready to sign off at Red State. They're out of here at 3. And I'll be out of here myself. Yeah, they're out of here at 3, so they got about 12 seconds. Thanks, folks, for tuning in over there. Appreciate you. We're still out here broadcasting on YouTube. We'll be here for a few more minutes, wrapping up this voter ID issue. But yeah, Maricopa County said we found some discrepancies. In Michigan, if they were given the opportunity, they'd probably find discrepancies there too. That's just the way it is. They cheated. They know they cheated. And the reason that Powell and Wood did not check or verify, because these people had affidavits. They'd already sworn that these events happened. What else you want them to do? I don't know. What they needed to do, I have no idea. And I have a feeling that the judicial system will bear these people out, that they were right and that they did do the right thing, or try to do the right thing. Judge Parker is claiming that they intentionally led willy-nilly, file willy-nilly suits, frivolous lawsuits. I don't know if they did, if they didn't. I can tell you this. They needed to be filed, especially after they pulled those antics down in Detroit at the TCF building where they were counting the votes. And they put paper up to the window. Atlanta, they had more votes than they were counting. It's just horrible, 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 horrible. So, and all of these people have to be careful because the judge can hold them in contempt, blow them up, and they're done. You know, I mean, they're toast. You know, toast, hello, toast, TOAST. But we'll see. They say Lynn Woods distances himself from Michigan election lawsuit and sanctions hearing. Okay. Whatever. They tickle me. See, this is where the wheat and the shaft meet. This is where people either get serious or they don't. See, this is where the big boys are. Put on your big boy pants and let's get busy. See, Trump was a big boy. He always wore the big boy pants, okay? And people didn't like that. It's like Fauci. Fauci's like, dude, you're gonna have a pandemic. You have a big pandemic. I would have been scared myself, but not Fauci. Man. Anyway, you heard from my guy Tony Heller, and you'll hear from me again tomorrow. So same time, same place. It's Charles Butler, The Reality Check, signing out.